You've seen the headlines, right? The social media craziness, the endless lists of names. The release of the Epstein Files has kicked up this massive storm of speculation. But what is actually in these documents? Is it a smoking gun, or is it something a lot more complicated? Well, let's cut through all that noise and break down what these files really tell us.
The only reason we're even able to have this conversation right now is because of a brand new standard for transparency. The idea here is crystal clear. This information is coming out no matter who it embarrasses or whose reputation it might harm. This quote, "This is the key that unlocked decades of sealed records."
Okay, so let's get right into the question that's on everyone's mind. Who is actually named in these files, and why has it caused such an insane stir?
When you look through the documents, the sheer breadth of influence is just staggering. It connects Epstein to this whole network of powerful people. We're talking royalty, politicians, tech founders, Wall Street titans, you name it. But before we go any further, there is an absolutely crucial piece of context we have to understand. And this right here, this is probably the single most important takeaway. Just because someone's name shows up in an email, or on a flight log, or in a calendar, that does not automatically mean they did anything criminal. I'll say it again. Being associated with him is not the same as a criminal charge.
So what kind of stuff are we actually seeing in these files? Well, here's a perfect example. This is an email from Richard Branson to Epstein with this pretty eye-opening line. Now, a spokesperson for Branson did later tell the media that this harem comment was meant as a joke and that it was referring to adult members of Epstein's staff. And here's another one. In this exchange about a woman, after Epstein described her in some pretty crude terms, the New York Giants co-owner Stephen Tisch replied with this question, pro or civilian? Tisch later put out a statement calling Epstein a terrible person and said he deeply regretted ever knowing him. But these are the kinds of raw, unfiltered communications that are now public.
So this all leads to the next big question, right? Why now? I mean, after all these years, why is this information suddenly seeing the light of day? Well, the answer is a new, pretty landmark piece of legislation. This right here, this is the legal engine that's driving this whole thing, the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It flew through Congress with almost unanimous support, and its mission is super simple. It forces the Department of Justice to publish all of its unclassified records connected to the Epstein and Maxwell cases.
And the law lays out a really clear three-step process. First, the DOJ has to release all the unclassified files. Second, and this is so important, it has to protect the victims by blacking out their personal information. And third, it has to go back to Congress and report on what it released and explain why, if anything, was held back.
And this is the document that actually put the wheels in motion. Citing that new Transparency Act, a federal court issued this order. And just like that, it officially unlocked the files, completely overriding decades of secrecy.
Now, to really understand why this new law was even necessary in the first place, we have to rewind the clock. We need to look at the original, incredibly controversial deal that Jeffrey Epstein got way back in 2008, a deal that people have been furious about for over a decade.
The difference here is it's shocking. On the left, you see what federal prosecutors originally wanted, a 60-count federal indictment, which could have meant a very long time in prison. And on the right, that's what actually happened. Epstein got what's called a non-prosecution agreement, or NPA. The result? No federal charges, less than 13 months served in a county jail, and this massive immunity deal for his alleged co-conspirators.
That deal was so controversial that the Department of Justice's own internal watchdog, the Office of Professional Responsibility, had to launch an investigation into it. Their final report concluded that the U.S. attorney who approved it, Alexander Acosta, exercised poor judgment. That's putting it mildly.
So what are the actual real-world consequences of being so closely associated with Epstein? Well, for the most high-profile case study, you don't have to look any further than the British royal family and the spectacular public fall of Prince Andrew.
The timeline of their friendship is just damning. They were introduced back in '99, and their association kept going even after Epstein was convicted in 2008 for soliciting a minor. That visit in 2010, when Andrew went to see Epstein in New York right after he got out of jail, that was a huge turning point. The fallout just snowballed until he was basically removed from public life, stripped of his titles.
And at the very heart of this whole scandal is this direct, incredibly serious allegation from Virginia Giuffre. She has consistently maintained that she was trafficked and forced into a sexual encounter with the prince back in 2001 when she was just 17 years old.
And what was the prince's response? This, from that now infamous BBC interview. This total denial, along with a bunch of other really bizarre claims he made, was seen by almost everyone as a total train wreck that just made everything 1,000 times worse.
Okay, so with all of these documents, all these names, and all this history finally out in the open, what's the big picture? What are we supposed to take away from this tidal wave of information?
Let's be really clear. The Epstein Files are not some simple list of clients. It's not one single indictment. It's a complex, messy archive of emails, logs, and records. And what it shows is a powerful network of people who are all connected to a convicted sex offender. Ultimately, this is a story about justice being delayed for a very long time and a new fight for transparency that is finally breaking through.
These files have basically opened a door into a secret world that operated in the shadows for decades. But this new era of transparency leaves us all with one final, huge question. As the light gets brighter and we see more and more, who is ultimately held accountable? And what does that accountability actually look like?